Welcome back to Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here with Geoffrey Turner. He is a senior counsel at Davies, Ward, Phillips and Weinberg, LLP, talking about overhauling the tax system. I had to interrupt you so we could pay our taxes here at the News Forum, so please continue with your thought.
Yeah, not at all. I was just acknowledging that some taxes have actually a purpose of influencing behavior, and that's acceptable if the behavior that's being influenced is, detrimental to the public good in some way. So for tobacco consumption, liquor consumption, even now cannabis consumption, for example, we have excise taxes on the consumption of those products because it's acknowledged that there are adverse health impacts from excessive consumption of those things. So that's not what I'm talking about in terms of taxes influencing behavior. The contention that I'm making is that more in our income tax system, the current government has reached for tax policy levers as part of their overall program for influencing behavior. And they've done that in a much more enthusiastic way than past governments have.
Gotcha. Understood. So wrapping it all up, what is the impact of the cumulative impact maybe on all of these tax policies for the average Canadian?
Well, I think it is part of this increase in complexity of our tax system and this insidious impact of all of these little behavioral incentives that are woven into our overall tax system. So it just makes our system just that much more incomprehensible, that much more difficult for everybody to comply with. And Tony, I could just give you some examples. For example, the very recent share purchase tax. So this is a new tax on publicly traded entities that repurchase their own shares in the marketplace. And the Trudeau government introduced this tax sort of as a copycat to what the Biden administration did not long before. And the ostensible purpose was to encourage businesses to redirect their capital more into their businesses rather than to distribute to shareholders as repurchase of shares or as dividends. And, query, is it really desirable for the government to put their weight on the thumbs of justice, if you will, and encourage or discourage corporations from making their own decisions about how to deploy their capital? It was sort of I think, an unnecessary tax. Two other examples dealing with the housing crisis. So, of course, we all know about housing affordability. That's absolutely a major problem in our current society. Well, as some of the policy levers, the government instinctively reacted to imposing the underused housing tax, right? So to discourage foreigners from owning homes in Canada and leaving them vacant. And, was that really necessary to have a national response when local municipalities like in Toronto or Vancouver are equally capable of addressing that if it's truly a problem in their areas? And then we had a very recent example in the fall economic statement, again, directed at housing affordability. So this notion of targeting sort of short-term rental market, so Airbnb hosts, and now expenses incurred to rent out homes, residences for short-term rentals, if they're not compliant with local municipal legislation or rules, the deductions of those expenses is denied. And so it's another use of a tax policy tool to influence behavior, to discourage the use of short-term rentals. And the whole idea is to bring those homes back into the market for longer-term rentals.
Got it. Let's just focus while we're on this topic about the impacts of all of this tax policy on low-income Canadians. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, see, really the biggest problem for low-income Canadians is that their incomes aren't rising fast enough. We don't have sufficient economic growth. And so the use of the tax system could be better designed to encourage businesses to invest, to encourage entrepreneurialism, to generate jobs that are going to assist lower income people and all Canadians. We need a vigorous tax system. I'm not going to claim that lower income persons are sort of overtaxed. I mean, we have a highly progressive personal income tax system. and persons at the lower end of the range
Right.
are subject to still relatively low marginal rates. I think we could improve that. But the goal for lower income persons is to preserve the sustainability of our social programs that
Right.
are intended to help people when they're vulnerable, if they have a health crisis, if they
Sure.
are temporarily out of work. And the long-term sustainability of those programs requires that we do a better job to grow our
Right.
economy and have the wealth to pay for that.